It's a tool. We've been given a user's manual to achieve unity, even with our ego, to make it our slave. So the power of the soul is manifested through the mind. We agree. And it has to be balanced in a unified order in order to discover our higher purpose. Agreed? Lauren says, I find it amusing how friends look at me like I have three heads when I try to open a discussion about ego and non-duality. Oh yeah, that goes over big at cocktail parties, Lauren. It is a bit isolating, but once you have a common community where these things can be discussed, and also the clients start coming to, you'll feel more validated and be able to point them in the right direction. So let's move on to the definition of Trataka. Looking intently with an unwavering gaze at a small point until tears are shed is known as Trataka by the Acharyas. This is written in the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, chapter 2, verse 31. So it means basically to gaze steadily at a fixed point. It's a process. It's not just in one event. It's a process of concentrating the mind. And concentrating means to undilute it, to concentrate it, to make it more concentrated, more less diluted with other oscillations. So this one-pointed concentration of the mind is termed ekagrata, 1 point. This requires pratyahara, removal or withdrawal of contact with other external stimulus from the world. It's deceptively simple. There's two forms. One is internal and one is external. I'm going to be teaching you external and a little bit of internal, but mostly external. It's easier to practice at by observing an object or a flame for your clients because it is material. Lots of people come to you will be from the material world, and so helping them to choose an object is going to be an easy thing, and then teaching them is going to be an easy thing. If one day they're ready to do something more complicated or longer, then we can, and if it works for them, it's a good fit, then you move them into the more complicated. Science. Okay. You see the anatomy of perception there. You can see how the eye is built. You can see the illustrations I've given you. Trataka is the result of blanking out everything that the eye can see except 1 point. And what we know about the eye is that has to be at a certain point with the eye. So it suspends the nervous system. The brain will isolate the object while eliminating every other object in its periphery, if you put it at the right place in front of the eyes. Once you stare at an object, just like you did with the oscillating circles, once you stare at any object, at the first instant, the brain processes it back here. The brain will start to use your buddhi, gathering data to understand what is it. It'll give it a name. It'll find something similar in your database, in your brain, and say, yes, it's just like that. And once your buddhi accepts it and recognizes it as what it is, seemingly, then it loses interest. It will withdraw its power of intellect from that object because it's named it, it's accepted it, it's done, it shuts down. So if you're still looking at the object, the buddhi has nothing to do. It has already seen it, acknowledged it, filed it, it goes away. So this is desensitization, we call, like when people look at violence for a long time, the brain becomes desensitized. This is how the anatomy of perception works. We can use that desensitization mechanism to shut down the other parts of the mind because the buddhi is first. No, Claudia, that's a great question. Do we see fear and anxiety in animals? No, we do see, like I saw a video today of a horse who had fallen down a well. The horse was fine until people came along with loud instruments to cut up the wall around it and help get it out. So it was a little afraid and of that sound. But if that horse had been around that sound its whole life, he would have been desensitized and he would not have had any fear. So humans have unreasonable fear. When we take a look at death itself, it's the biggest fear in humanity, and we study death and we understand death, the fear of it, again, it dissipates because we are desensitized to it. We study it long enough, and in Gorknath's case, he studied his belly button long enough that he understood it. The brain, the buddhi, shuts down, and then he's able to actually go through the nabi and see the rest of what's behind it. So that's how the anatomy of perception works. But accessing exactly where that point is in the mind in order to shut down the three parts of the brain so that you can enter into this sort of, where do you go? This is the next question is, so if this works, you can see that the line of sight, you can see in this one, the peripheral system, you can see that if the line of sight, if the candle or object is directly in front of the middle point of the, not over here or over here, no periphery, but directly in front of the middle line of sight, you can see that it enters into what we call a white point. And that white point is directly, it goes direct to the back of the brain with more perception at the middle point than anywhere else in the eye. So it has to be middle. So you have to be sitting up, you have to have a straight back. The candle wick or object has to be at the middle of the eye with a straight neck. So this is really important. And you can see the next graph where we've placed the line of the candle at the middle light. The ganglion cells in the optic nerve, they fire immediately and completely. But if you move it to the left or the right, the optic nerve doesn't fire. And if you move the light, if you've got an object that there's light on that object in the middle eye, it will fire immediately in the optic center. But if you put the light on everything, it doesn't fire. If you put the light, behind you, it doesn't light. So we've learned, Trataka, later that the placement and the object is really important for this to work. Why do we want it to work and be so specific? Because you don't want to tell your clients that they have to sit and study something for 45 minutes a day. If they do it right, it's 5 minutes a day. For students in college, it's 2 minutes before they go into the exam. Okay, so choice of object. I came across a 1962 article on Trataka from Swami Satyananda Saraswati, written in Bombay. And he talks about the use of Trataka, the primary practice, but also the advanced and all the crazy things that can happen if you take this to an extreme. But